All right, so
Okay.
welcome to the Prometheus and Ecosystem Community meeting. This time around on June 3rd. We are happy to have everybody here, and obviously this meeting is following the CNCF Code of Conduct. And with that, we do have some announcements to get into. Ganesh is not in the meeting, it says in the notes. Is there anyone who wants to speak up instead, or should I just read what he wrote down? All right, so yeah. I guess I'm gonna read that. So Prometheus release Prometheus version 2.19 release candidate 0 will be underway this week and will be out next week. So I guess what that means is everybody should go ahead and start trying out the new release candidate, deploy it to various systems they have available, staging, production, and whatnot. See if you can find any bugs. And with that, please report feedback through the obvious and known channels, so that we can gather as much information about the supposedly 2.19 release before actually doing the release. And then I guess, Julian, do you want to go into your topic points following right after?
So Simon will release Alert Manager 0.21 in the coming days. So there is still, I think, 2 pull requests pending. The highlights of the release is that we will try to mitigate some PagerDuty rate limiting that they will enforce during the summer. There is a new mtool cluster command that you can run to see the state of the cluster. And we will also have a limitation of alerts in webhooks so that you can limit the number of alerts that are actually present in the webhook sent by the alert manager. And then there is also work on the logs. There is a bunch of work that has been done on the logs of the alert manager. We have updated the dependencies, including the member list. So the clustering feature has been updated, which was a jump, I think, of more than a year. And there are also lots of bug fixes around the alert manager.
All right, very cool. Any comments from the people who can speak up right away? Otherwise, we do have a Q&A section at the end of the call, where we also want to encourage people to ask questions. So we actually do have some swag to give away, just so you know. So please put forward your questions that we have enough at the end. Anyone who wants to speak up? All right. With that, Brian wants to talk about PromCon related things.
Okay, I think Julian was next, but I can skip in just saying the CFP closed there on Sunday. So now Prometheus team is looking over all the proposals. Thanks for people sending them in, and we'll look through those, figure out what's going to be selected. And we are looking at a virtual event. So the plan is, at least as I currently understand it, everything will be pre-recorded, and we'll choose a time zone that works for as many people as possible. So like one of the considerations is if you're putting a talk and you're from Asia, you're probably going to be at the start of the list, so you have the best chance of being around to ask questions during your talk. But obviously this is all new to us, so we're kind of working it out. We might change the format and so on.
All right, very cool. Looking forward to that. Any comments from the people who can speak up? Otherwise, everybody else feel free to put your questions into the Q&A section. All right, so back to Julian. Sorry about not seeing your point in between.
So we are now discussing on the developers mailing list about the creation of a new official Prometheus repository, which will be kind of an exporter toolkit repository. So for that will be like public code. So we will actually encourage the exporters to use that to reduce the boilerplates and to try to unify the behaviors of the exporters. one of the tasks, for example, that will come to that repository will be, for example, the TLS handling. But I know maybe some people have some projects around getting nicer landing pages for the exporter, that kind of thing. So that would be the place to be. So the details are still being discussed on the developers mailing list right now, but this will come in the coming weeks, I think, and it will be under probably my supervision, and probably also Ben will work on that, because Ben has also lots of ideas around that.
All right, cool. I guess no one wants to speak up, but I'm looking forward to something more cohesive for sure. So yeah, happy to see what's gonna happen there going forward. If there's nothing from the Prometheus project directly, then we shall go into the ecosystem updates, starting with Kirill on Lockyer things.
Hey, that's me.
Yes.
Can I present? Can I share my screen? Yes, I can do that. So I did this presentation at Graphanicon, so I don't know if a couple of you may be familiar with that. Sorry for this. And the idea is in Loki, where we have the Lockyer language, which is very much inspired by the Prometheus language. We want to add the ability to extract label from the logline and also sample values directly from the logline. And I wanted to show you a bit where we are on this, and also show you a small demo of this. So the idea is currently it's not possible to use, for instance, if you have an Nginx log that has a path, you need to instrument, well, you need to configure Promtail currently to extract at tailing time those labels, and also those labels may not be very nice to extract because they can affect the performance of Loki. So we want to add to the language a way to extract those status code and path directly from the log line. And so we're gonna add a new operator. I personally call it the extract operator, and we're gonna start with the regex one. And you have an example here of how the operator will look like. There's still two syntax that we need to get a consensus on within the team. So there's like the functional syntax, which is more close to what Prometheus is using, and there's the pipe syntax. So this is this one, which is more close to what we have for the filter in Loki. So for those who don't know, the filter is a way to filter the log line itself in Loki. So it's extra filtering, which is applied after labeling filtering. And so since now we're going to be able to extract a sample, that means that Loki will be able to do more than just count, because currently it can only do count aggregation, vector aggregation. And so we're going to be able to do sum over time, average, max, min, and there's also some nice new aggregation that we're going to be able to do, which is the quintile one. And it's actually going to be the same quintile that Prometheus is doing, the same over time. Except that instead of being over the dimension of the label, it will be over a range of logs. Just to give you an idea of how the query will look like, which is still not fully defined, but that could look like this, which this one gives you, for an Nginx server, will give you the maximum average latency for a given path and method. So I have a small demo running, which is a proof of concept branch that I have. I'm gonna have to probably make it bigger. I think it's big enough actually. All right, so I'm gonna go to explore. And so I have a Nginx server currently running, and he's being actually attacked by 3 clients, and then each client is getting proxied to a downstream server, some sort of backend. So I can look at this. So I'm using the Docker plugin which has a different discovery, which I think it's interesting here. You can see that I have a compose service or container name. So I'm going to use container name, looking at the Nginx one. And there's nothing really special about those logs. I think everyone in this call is pretty familiar with those Nginx logs, except that I added myself the latency here. You can see it here. So this is the latency. And I'm going to use the query history because those new query, especially the regex, can be difficult to write. So I have it here. So this is exactly the same query that came from the documentation, the slides. So you can see that I'm doing the pipe. I did the pipe first for now because it was easier to do the POC with. But the idea is I'm extracting the method, the path, the status code, and the value. I'm sure there's a lot of people here that's going to look at this regex and say that it's probably not the most efficient one. Yeah, it's probably true. I'm not the best at writing regex. But yeah, I quickly figured out that getting this right will be very difficult. And so what I did is I actually give feedback on that specific query, which was not part of the design doc at first, but I wanted to show you that it's kind of cool. You can see the data being extracted. So the log line have been changed, and it's actually showing me all the data that have been extracted. So you can see that the method, the path, and the status code is being extracted here, and the value, which is the latency. So now that we have this, we can do those new aggregation. And we can start by doing the rate over time. So I can do a rate, and then I can do a sum. And this time I can sum by path, which is not a label. A label that I have for that stream. So where's the path? All right. I need to click on metric because it's going to be a metric. And so this gives me the rate per path. And I think this is very, very interesting. But we can do way more interesting. We can do average over time. So the average over time is going to use the value. This is like a automatic. If you don't have the value, you're going to get an error because you need to extract at least the value. And so we can do the max per path. Actually, I could do the max per path and status code. All right. And so that's the max latency. Well, max average latency, right? So that's pretty much it for the demo. I just have one last things that I wanted to show, which I actually built a dashboard using that new feature language on top of the Nginx. And if we look at it, I found it very interesting. So that's the dashboard. So all of those have been built with only Loki. And the use case is really being able to instrument application that you don't own the code and you cannot use, the Prometheus client there, which Nginx is a good use case. Although there's, I'm using Nginx, but there's the Nginx exporter, which is pretty much sufficient. But you probably have those other use cases where you cannot instrument those workload and you can use the logs to do that. And we can see here that there's the P99 that I'm doing of the latency. And I can even do some alert. So this is Grafana alert, obviously. But we're planning to support alert manager alerts, well, the rules style alerts that exist in Prometheus. We're going to do the same for Loki. So I won't go into much detail about all of those new, all of those panel here. But there's a talk that I did 2 weeks ago at GrafanaCon about all those new features. If you want to know more, you can check the talk. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
All right, cool. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A section because we are quite short on time now. Right, and with that, straight into the next one, Bartek.
Cool, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I just want to quickly, welcome all the new joiners in our Prometheus ecosystem community. I think I already spoke about the GSOC, which is like Google Summer of Code program, which allows for some mentees to get into the community. So just a reminder, we have Rishi maintains, who is like the maintainer of our testing Prometheus project. He has like 2 mentees. I don't really know name of them. However, they are working on Prombench support for EKS and Kind. I know Cortex has 1 GSOC student around, I think, deletion, some indexing for not used labels. In Thanos, we have 2 GSOC students. We have Harshita. She's working on deletion endpoint, and also she will be touching dynamic retention of metrics in Thanos. So hopefully we can move this topic forward also for Prometheus. And we have Prem, who is helping us with the React UI, and he is actually basing his work on the Prometheus React UI, so we can reuse a lot. And actually, as a part of this, we are trying to significantly enrich Thanos UIs on certain components. So think about, in advanced bucket viewer and federated alerts and rules viewing, and maybe targets page and things like that. So it sounds really epic. But that's not all, because literally 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, we started a different program based on kind of organized by the Linux Foundation and CNCF. So we have a couple of new students as well from that program. So in Prometheus, we have Nicole, and she's helping with the remote write improvements. We have Jessica, who is aiming to implement the rules retroactive evaluation, which is super amazing. Like, it's issue number 11 in Prometheus, so it's super nice. And I think it's a major step into backfilling in Prometheus, so that's epic. And in Thanos, we have Uche from Nigeria, who is helping with the website. Actually, he's helping on this particular blocker on that we are looking to solve in Prometheus website as well. So have a solid versioning of our docs per release. So I think the idea is to help in those 2 projects. We have Sonia, she's helping with Katacoda tutorials, and Yash working on loading and limits. So if I'm not wrong, if I not forget about anyone, because there are so many, we have in total 2 new diverse students. So that's pretty amazing. So please say hello and welcome them into the community. And yeah, feel free to help them in our communication channels and on GitHub if needed. And on top of that, I would love to thank all the maintainers who decided to help, because it is some time to mentor those newcomers in our community. So yeah, that's all from me.
Very cool, and happy welcome to everybody participating. All right, with that, straight into the next one, because time. Rob.
Hey, Matthias, thanks. Yeah, great to be able to kind of mention a few things about M3. So appreciate getting involved. Just to quickly update anyone in the community that's following along at all. We actually today cut 0.15. It's been a work in progress for quite some time. A large amount of the bootstrapping code that can bootstrap data either from disk or over the network got rewritten completely. So kind of delayed the release by multiple months. But yeah, we're here with 0.15 now. So some of the highlights there is we have a community donated M3CTL command line tool now, which kind of helps inspecting your M3 deployment. It kind of complements the Kubernetes operator, so you're not kind of directly interacting with M3. We can wrap up the interactions you do with it, whether that's on premise or in Kubernetes, with that command line API tool, and that was donated by Brian McQueen. And so the other big news is we decided to complement our remote read capabilities with Prometheus by basically, I believe this is something Thanos and Cortex already do, but embedding the Prometheus, the original Prometheus query engine inside of M3 query and M3 coordinator now. So, this improves a lot of the performance for queries by basically skipping serialization, deserialization, and network overhead between Prometheus and M3 services. And mapping rules are now available via YAML config. So, a lot of the core features of M3 that were never fully ported to open source are now starting to become a lot more accessible to open source users. So for instance, that allows you in config to say, I want to keep, a label with application engine X stored for in a different namespace than my default namespace, so I can keep it longer or shorter and do things like that. We also have done a bunch of performance work, and we've seen some really good progress on that. So I'm glad that that's been done. We're beginning work on streaming data for data warehouse queries. I believe Bartek's actually already kind of kicked off a few questions about this, and love to see community involvement here. And if there's some way we can basically work on a shared protocol that the projects can use, that would be fantastic. But yeah, I'll leave that for later discussion. And we have 0 documentation updates because we've been really focused elsewhere. So hopefully we're going to make it more accessible for the community to actually consume M3 over the next few releases, writing and republishing a lot of our documentation. But yeah, that's it for me.
Cool progress. Okay, so we are basically out of time, I think. Like, we have a 30-minute calendar event booked. However, as there are so many participants, I would suggest to just go forward, and the meeting is being recorded, so anyone can, after the fact, just take a look at the recording if you think you might miss anything and you need to drop out. So let's keep on going with a question from Bartek. He wants to, I think, more directly ask the Prometheus community, right? Or like the Prometheus maintainers.
Thanks. So essentially, you can click on this link provided in the item. As a kind of Prometheus ecosystem community, we are slowly looking into other use cases our maybe long-term data for metric data comes handy. So obviously we have APIs for real-time monitoring. You can have some basic analytics query against that. But we found that we are lacking, more OLAP kind of processing type of queries that maybe are more streaming, more long-running queries that doesn't need to be real-time. However, they had to finish and not use as much resources we gave it, and it has to finish in a reasonable time. And we have those use cases in Red Hat. We have seen other users of Thanos and Prometheus having the same use cases, where not only they need to kind of have monitoring and metrics data, but they also have different data sources. So it would be nice to have some systems, some APIs that would allow to mix and join those data into meaningful, cubes, OLAP cubes with some meaningful dimensions for business analytics, essentially, right? So what we are looking here in this kind of effort is finding how we can the best integrate into those systems. We maybe should pick like one system that makes sense in open source and allow better integration with Prometheus, Thanos, or maybe Prometheus storage format to allow this streaming and those analytic queries. Now, the interesting part is that in the perfect world, we would love to not replicate data, because it is kind of doable to convert Prometheus data into I don't know, Spark or like whatever Hadoop uses and any other format. Now, we we could do that. However, ideally, we would have API that could transform that on the fly, maybe, to just reduce this. But this is like a nice to have goal. The must have would be to have a support with some streaming OAP solution. So the action item for you would be to give your feedback, what you are using, what you are, I don't know, what projects you will have success with. The candidate has to be open source. That's a rule, but otherwise we are looking for nice API we could hook into. So anyone in this call who has a voice, if you can speak up and I don't know, if you have any thoughts, feel free to go. If not, we can follow up on the GitHub issue. There is also mailing list conversation, and we will be focusing about this subject on the newly created CNCF SIG observability meetings, which are every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. So next Tuesday it will be another one. So yeah, please join us there as well. We'll be focusing on that. Thank you.
All right, cool. I guess we can open it up kind of as far as like opening it up in terms of Zoom currently allows us to do 2 questions from the community. We have like 5 questions we can already start answering. However, we still want to encourage people to just put in their questions to either the chat or the Q&A system, or even into the Google Doc. Feel free to drop them there, and we're gonna go through them. And then, as said previously, we have some swag available from the CNCF store, and we kind of like will pick a random winner from the people who ask questions later on, and then I will come forward and talk to you if you're the winner. All right, so the first one is Keith Smith. Any progress on the Cortex front-end integrations merging with Thanos and the nice parts of Cortex?
Yes, I can speak up because I was kind of assigned to this, and no progress. And however, we have that planned on our sprint, let's say. And so hopefully in the next month, you should see like a major movement in this, because we literally need that as well. To have a consistent configuration for the amazing Cortex query front-end service that everyone wants to use. So yeah, that's coming, and it will be available as Thanos query frontend new service. Good question.
I think there's a more general thing that we can say here as well. I think we talked about it in the last community meeting as well, but it's been only more true since the last community meeting that the Cortex team has been contributing a bunch of things to Thanos, most recently multiple like caching pieces that were kind of already present in Cortex in many ways. So there's a lot of other things even beyond the query front end that the Cortex folks are contributing to Thanos, and it's been really amazing collaborating with them.
All right, very cool. So the next question is from, I don't know, Wojciech, I guess. Sorry if I butchered your name. So a question to Brian: beside the pre-recorded videos, will there be a kind of a live panel on PromCon as it was on DockerCon? It came quite nicely and it gave a lot of random but useful information.
So as it stands, we haven't gotten that far in the discussion. We're just at the moment looking at the main talks, like the 20-minute talks and lightning talks. Like it's possible we'll have one, but we didn't have one at the last PromCon. We just had more lightning talks. So that's still up in the air, basically.
But I guess it's good feedback to know that people are interested in this.
Yeah, keep it in mind as we're proposing it. I can probably take the next one as well as
yeah, go ahead if you may want to read it.
Yeah, so Jürgen is asking about the release candidate of Prometheus and where they can find it. So it's not out yet, but it will, once it's available, it'll be on the Prometheus announced mailing list, and you'll be able to try it out. So like the big feature in this one is mapping of head, which should further reduce memory usage. So the more testing we can get on that, the better.
All right, you heard it. Everybody go install the release candidate when it's out. All right, perfect. And then Ayayan, I suppose that's how I would pronounce it. Sorry for butchering the next name if that's the case. Hey, what's the changes and fixes in Alert Manager alerts in webhooks?
So I will take that one. So in the webhook itself, we will add the ability to limit the number of alerts. So the idea is that if you have a system that, for example, send SMSs, maybe you don't want 10,000 SMSs to be sent, but you kind of want to limit the number of alerts in a webhook. And so there will be a limitation that you can set that will be off by default. And also there will be a new field that will say, okay, we have suppressed that many alerts in the webhook.
All right, that's very useful. And then
I mentioned that this feature is throwing alerts away because the ending system just can't deal with messages of that size. It isn't a new throttling feature or whatnot. It's just a safety mechanism.
Okay, that's a very good comment indeed. All right, then next question comes from Rito. Is the exporter toolkit, in quotes, intended as a replacement of the current client? So the client Golang, the client Python, etc.
So first of all, the exporter toolkit currently is only planned in the Golang, and then it's not a new client, it is for the server part. So client Golang is mostly for exposing metrics, instrumenting your application, but this will be really for the true exporters and not for instrumenting any application. So this will focus on the exporters themselves. And you can read in the mailing list the consideration that have been made because we already were planning on putting an client Golang, but then we decided to go for a standalone repository.
That makes sense, at least to me. If you want to drop the like a link to the mailing list discussion, if that's possible in the doc, then people can just go into the meeting notes and find it there. All right, and then we have Bartek who wants to ask a question. I will refrain from putting you on the Rumble for swag. That's okay.
Oh no. All right. Anyway, I will ask anyway. So sorry to kind of getting back to the same topic. However, since we have Rob in the call and he already mentioned that in this release or like in next releases of M3DB, the team wants to focus on this analytic kind of use case. Maybe let's give him a chance to kind of elaborate more. I would love to hear at least maybe from M3DB space, what do you plan to do? I heard Spark and like, what else? And like exactly how it looks.
Yeah, yep. More than happy to do that. And I won't spend too long, but so at Uber, M3DB was really used for ETLing data out of into Hadoop and stored in HDFS. And that's where a lot of like people wrote Hive queries against it. And that's really taking a subset of data out of the actual entire data set. So even then it was really hard to do really large queries, right? Because you still only have some amount of the data that's being ETL'd out of the entire set of data. We were experimenting with Presto support when I left, and that was really exciting because you could leave all the data in M3B. You're not paying all this egress and ingress costs just to move data constantly around. And you could push the predicates down. So at least like the filtering of data came back correctly. So that's why Presto is definitely interesting to us. Spark is interesting in a different way in that it does support these interactive queries. But it's similar to Presto in that it doesn't warehouse the data at all, right? It's still purely in-memory query engine. It has a bit more protection against like long-running jobs, and it can save the state of what it's doing and save intermediate results on disk. And also it just has native like machine learning frameworks available for use. The programming language R you can use natively with anything that exposes a Spark data set. So that's why that's really interesting to us. And I think Spark may be even more interesting considering it can do both interactive as well as ETL and, R and machine learning. I did see that the Presto just released a Prometheus connector, I think today, maybe even. So that's exciting. It does look like, there's a few nuances there where it's literally just hitting the query API. And it does have predicate push down, so it's only going to retrieve the actual metrics you're looking for that's involved with the query. But yeah, there's probably some more work to be done there. And I think if the community could really come together on what they would want in a first version of this, we could come up with some protocol where multiple Prometheus backends, and including Prometheus itself, can benefit from being able to ship the same thing, and they can all use the same connector to a thing like Spark or a thing like Presto. But in my mind, the nice thing about Spark, even if you want your data in something else like Pinot or Druid or ClickHouse or whatever else, having one mechanism to get it out of Prometheus, which could be Spark, and then dump it into other things is interesting, because Spark does have the ability to store data after it's queried it and applying aggregates and stuff like that. That's why Spark really seems really interesting to me, but that's I've already spent 5 minutes talking about it. So that's kind of the TLDR on our end.
Yeah, to me, it seems like the Presto connector probably would make an amazing fit with remote read, because that's kind of our universal API that we already have for reading data in raw format. No. Yeah,
the problem with it, and Bartek probably has some opinions here as well, is that the default remote read is not streamed at all. Now I know that the streaming one that Bartek and the rest of the Thanos folks worked on is stream compatible. The only issue with that is that it's moving TSZ chunks over the wire and streaming that. And all of these libraries, especially for Spark and Presto, have to be written in either Scala or Java. And so there's no it would have to rewrite all the decompression stuff there. So it'd be interesting. Yeah, we'd have to collaborate on working out what that looks like.
Yeah, we need to ensure some adoption of this. Yeah, it makes sense. No, I think that's amazing starting point for this initiative, and I think I think community should look on those two and check the use cases and how far we can get. The major question I would like to ask is is remote read even good enough, right? Because it's still real time, and how to plan those queries and maybe long-term queries and things like that. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, let's set aside some time to talk about it. Anyone interested would love to kind of jam on that.
Awesome. Any other opinions on that?
There are just people saying they also want to talk to you. So whoever said that, feel free to reach out to Rob and Bartek for sure, and then you can have an in-depth discussion.
Yes.
Otherwise, yeah.
There's one person about who wants to talk about timescale, I think.
Yeah.
Can we give him a voice maybe if we have still time, 5 minutes, or?
Sure, let me try to find
unless maybe
if they want to, but I can make them a panelist. So here we go.
What, maybe?
If you want, you can speak up now. Otherwise, it's fine if you don't want to.
Hey, I just wanted to mention I'm a developer from TimescaleDB, and we are right now developing an integration with Prometheus, and the whole point was to allow the kind of analytical queries that Bartek talks about and joins with, relational or other time series data. So it's a very young project. We started, the database is not so young, but the integration with Prometheus is young. So we're looking for kind of any and all feedback about what people would find useful, whether they would find the SQL language useful for analytical and OLAP queries, and whether we can work with any of you guys to make export into and out of the system easier.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you for reaching us. I think it's interesting case. As far as I remember, you essentially remote write this data to some connector, right? And this connector then imports the data into the timescale DB, which is kind of Postgres based, right? So
that is correct.
So yeah, if anyone is familiar with, I guess, Postgres and kind of those kind of SQL analytics, then that makes sense. I think I looked into the connector kind of architecture. I think there are maybe some ways to simplify this. So yeah, definitely maybe, yeah, there are better ways to integrate, but yeah, that's definitely worth to look, and I hope this fits into this recommendation as well.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
All right. I mean, that's like the perfect outcome of this community meeting, is to be able to say the community needs to collaborate on these things. So I hope that Bartek and Rob and Matev can going forward and maybe start a discussion around this more in depth. Otherwise, there's one question from Ozan, but it's like super related to the analytics tool. So this time around, I'm gonna kind of make an ending here, and yeah, we have like these 5 questions. So let me put in 1, 2, 5 into the random number generator and click generate. So number 41, and looking at the list, we have Ayayan, I hope I don't butcher your name again, who won the CNCF swag. Please reach out to me on CNCF Slack or Twitter or somewhere so that I can give the voucher to you. And with that, I think that's this month's community meeting. Hopefully we will see you all next month at the beginning, at the first Wednesday again. It's been really cool talking to everybody, seeing faces while sitting at home, and hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next month.
Thank you, Matthias, for leading, and thank
you.
Sure,
always.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.